in order to improve our future, we need to first create better vision. We creating imaginations about the future, and then we are wasting all our skills, power, and money to reach those imaginations.
So, hello all, and welcome to another episode on Design to Connect. We are rolling season 2, and that means that whoever we are connecting with is someone who is using design to make positive impact, reduce inequalities, and contribute to the sustainable development goals. Our today's guest is an urban planner with some data science knowledge and background. You might have heard his TED Talk. You might have purchased his the children book that he's written or joined one of his workshops. He's the co-founder of Humankind, and his name is Lior Steinberg. Did I say your surname correct?
You said it pretty good. There are many ways too.
Okay, great. Hi, Lior. How are you? How are you today?
I'm good, thanks, and thanks for having me here. I'm really happy to participate in the podcast.
Great, thank you for joining. So before we go to the conversation, I'm just gonna give a short intro of who you are, and then we will jump in. So, Lior, you're an urban planner living in Rotterdam, in Netherlands. You help cities to go beyond functionality and plan urban spaces that make people smile. That is cool. Every project that you participate in has one thing in common, which is making people-oriented cities. You've been born and raised in Tel Aviv. You've lived in Berlin and Stockholm, and that's where you've got your master's in urban and regional planning. And you're a Jane Jacobs enthusiast. And because of that, you love great spaces, great public spaces, and you want to make cities better with an emphasis on local and innovative interventions.
I approve this message. That was perfect.
I stole it from your LinkedIn. Interesting. I actually found a video of you 2 years ago that you were starting a podcast. I think it was exactly in that room.
Yeah, I have a friend and colleague, George Liu, and we just one Friday afternoon, just like today, we decided to grab a beer and record a podcast. But we decided to quit at our peak after one episode, and I think we will keep it there. It's a very specific one episode. That's I think it's still relevant if someone is looking online on YouTube. Still.
No, definitely. I loved it. And I
Thank
really
you.
loved the guy also. So that was great. To start with the questions, you've lived in a couple of different cities throughout your, let's say, adult life. So I kind of want to start with you asking about that and how did that experience living in different cities, being exposed to different cultures, has affected what you're doing today. I want to understand, like, was there a personal journey that you went through your experiences, or what you're doing is a passion that comes from your childhood, or is something that you wanted to do like way back? So yeah.
To be honest, I think that until I was around 20, I didn't even know that the profession of urban planning exists. So it's nice story to tell people that I always wanted to do it and I always been busy with the cities, but I actually never knew that it's a profession, and that's because I grew up in a country in Israel and in a city, Tel Aviv, that it's very difficult to even realize that there is planning behind. I mean, there is so much mess going on, and of course, the country is pretty young and doesn't have culture and history of great urban planning. And if you look at specifically Tel Aviv, you see that the only great parts in the city were built and designed by British architects and planners that were there while the British Empire was ruling Palestine before the Second World War. So you see that actually everything that was built after the establishment of Israel as a country is very car-oriented and very engineered minded, which makes sense when you build all new cities in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. So that's one thing. That's if you grow up in Israel, you might even not think about the profession urban planning. And only later on, when I started getting interested in the topic, and especially coming across Jane Jacobs, the books, and of course the classic, Death and Life of Great American Cities, that's when I realized that, wow, okay, urbanism is a thing. There are urban thinkers, and this is something I would like very much to pursue. And this realization and other personal experiences and beliefs led me to move out of Israel and to Europe. And in Europe, I think is a better place to study urbanism and urban planning. And that's why I feel very lucky and to have the opportunity, which I know that many people around the world don't have, which is to get to really the option to study urban planning in well-developed, great countries, which I think is, I wish it was an option for everybody around the world, and I was lucky enough to be able to do it.
Right. And in your TED Talk, you talk about how like living in these three cities affected the way that you acted, especially like as it came to your life with bikes.
Commute, yeah. Yeah, I think that was one of my biggest realization, is that it's when you grow up outside of the Netherlands and you hear stories or you get to visit Amsterdam, you think, wow, this is incredible how everybody cycles here. And it is very easy to just tell yourself a story about the Dutch culture and about Dutch people, and just basically say, okay, the Dutch cycle because Dutch people like to cycle. But through my journey in those different cities, I realized that actually I changed my way of moving around. So when I lived in Tel Aviv and I was already in the age of obtaining a driving license, I did it right away because that's actually the only way to get around the city, especially 15 years ago. Now it's getting a bit better. And when I moved to Stockholm or Berlin, I used only public transportation because that was the really easy, fast way to get around. And of course, I was a poor student, unable to buy a car. It was just the way to go. And they have amazing public transportation systems. And then when I moved to the Netherlands, I immediately, I saw everybody cycles around me, and I bought a bicycle. And I think it is because of two reasons. And the first is that we are social creatures. So if we see everybody around us cycle, especially people from our age group or people that look like us, and even as a student, if you see business men and women cycle, you are thinking, okay, that's a valid option. But the actual reason why I cycle is not because I'm like a great environmentalist, or I hate the car. I just did it because it was the cheapest, fastest, easiest way to move around. First Groningen, where I lived, and now in Rotterdam. And I think that this showed me that actually the environment around you, the people around you, but the built environment around you mostly, they move you to your transportation choice. And that's how I kind of ended up realizing that the only solution to promote cycling is better urban planning and urban design, and not just convincing people that cycling is fun, which is how a lot of countries try to promote cycling, to just make some ads and try to push people to cycle. But that doesn't help. You need to change the environment.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's infrastructure that actually works throughout the whole city. Yes.
Then that's incredible how easy it is and how not popular it is. So it's possible to do, but it's so so common to fail, actually.
That's true. And I mean, I know that, for example, Netherlands is also amongst the five happiest countries, let's say, always is in the list of happy countries. So do you think that it can,
Yeah.
is it a factor? Do you think that could be a factor?
Look, I have to say, I live in the Netherlands and I'm happy here. I don't like per se those rankings because they seem to not measure happiness. They measure how similar your country is to Scandinavia. It seems like always Scandinavia is
That's
top three,
true.
and all the rest is how similar they are. Then you have those weird entrances to the list from different countries that you would not expect. And then you might go to a country that ranks very low and see people that seem to be much
Happier.
happier than us and much less stressed. So I don't know if the Netherlands is the happiest place to live. And definitely, if you look at the world in the Western European point of view, it might be a very great place to live in. But it definitely, I'm sure that allowing people to move in an active way, in
Yeah.
an independent way, in a sustainable way, in a fun way throughout the city makes you happier because commuting to work or to school or just going to do errands and like just go to the supermarket, it takes around 2 hours of your day. It's very quick calculation. It's around 10% of your time and maybe even 20% of your wake time, right? So you spend quite a lot going to places, moving around. That's on average most people. And if you're just forced to sit in a car and sit in traffic and getting angry, it's just not a good way to spend your time and your life. And there are already studies and research showing that people that have longer commutes, especially with a car, are suffering more, both in terms of physical health, but also in terms of mental health. I came across a nice research showing that there is a correlation between the length of your commute to the percentage of or the likelihood that you will get divorced.
Oh,
And
wow.
in the US, I need to look again for this research to publish it, but to republish it. But it makes so much sense. I mean, you get home after 1.5 hours on the road, so angry. You have time just to maybe eat something, watch some TV, and go to sleep. It doesn't sound like a great recipe for great marriage life, right?
I know.
So
Yeah, I also read something, or maybe I heard it in a podcast, that they were saying that okay, we start using cars to be more efficient and faster, but right now, like the speed of people moving through the city, also because of the traffic, is almost the same as with horses. So
yeah,
it's really
I think it
it's
is that
really funny.
yeah, crossing London with a horse and a carriage was as fast as crossing now London with a car, and it makes sense because the faster it gets to go with a car, and the easier it gets to get a car, more people will buy a car, making the city more congested.
Yeah,
And yeah, so it's funny because in many countries it is now like in many, especially let's say, uh, yeah, countries with a lot of cars, the average speed to go through the city is 15-20 kilometers per hour, regardless of what the speed limit is. I mean, the speed limit can be 50 and still it will go very low. And cycling is faster. So if you
agree.
actually provide people great cycling infrastructure, they will choose to cycle and not to drive a car, making driving actually more attractive to those who really need or have to.
That's true. That's true. Okay, moving a little bit from biking to the work that you're doing with Humankind. You talk a lot with having a human-centric, holistic, and systemic approach in the way that
Yeah.
you work. And I think like those are the best three words that you can explain uh, how you work. So I want to ask you a little bit more about that, and how does that process really look like? Like, how do you make sure that you're always working on these three pillars? Are there specific tools you're using, a specific, let's say, stakeholders that you're trying to engage with? Uh, how does it look like?
Yeah. So of course it is easier said than done. And if I look at project that Humankind we've been doing in the past, or project that I was really focused on, or project that the team has been doing, of course, you can always look and see that it is not perfect, because the vision that we have and we all share is that you really need to put the human as the center. And of course, with the current systems and current mechanisms and current budgeting and decision-making processes, it is very difficult. So there are a lot of challenges to do it. On the other end, I think that it's also quite easy if you just change your mindset. So if you always try to remember that the end user of your project, let it be public space design, but or also strategy for the city, the end user at the end is the humans who live in the city. And it is so easy to forget it, because actually the majority of city making work is not being done on the streets. There are very few people that are on the streets doing the work. The majority of the work is being done in offices, like I'm sitting here right now, and far away from the real city life. And this is, of course, something that we fall for, and I fall for so often. You have a deadline, you just need to finish a project. You end up doing something very quick, or not as good as you wished to do. The problem with this, when you're an urbanist, is that the results of your projects affect real people. So I think that there are very few professions that have so much impact on others. On the other end, it is a profession that has a lot of stress, especially when you have an office or you work for the municipality. I don't think that the people who do those projects are bad people, but they have a lot of stress, a lot of projects, they are actually trying to work out in a system that already exists and is very difficult to change, and in organizations that are very
rigid.
And old style, right? So it's, they also have, they have also a lot of regulations and rules and budget constraints. So, well, coming back to how we try to do it. So first, the mindset. Always look at the person as the center, and then also in terms of the design methods that we use, depends on the project. We always try to look at them through those lenses. So if it is about public space study, even creating the user journeys is already helping you to look at the public space from different angles, and also like pushes you to do the participations with the right user groups. It may be very simple tricks. I like if you look at if you design even a bike infrastructure and a bike lane, and you just ask yourself, would my grandpa and grandma be able to use it? Would my cousin be able to use it, who is like 5 years old? And would my friends that are my age be able to use it? So, and that's actually incredible how many of the designs that we make in cities, we as urban planners in general make in cities, don't fit those 3 questions. So that's actually, just by asking those few simple questions, you already make much better decisions. And I think that we also, when we develop those methods, like our good public space tool, which is a tool that we go out to the cities and trying to look whether the public space is quote unquote good. We have in this tool questions that reflect different experiences of people. So that's, if you just start with the human as the center and then you go for the plans and the strategies, it's much easier to make the right proposals. And I have to say that it is incredible how easy it is, and how just like great, I mentioned before, great bicycle infrastructure. It is so easy to do sometimes, and it's incredible how it's not done more. I'm baffled by how little it's being done.
That's true. And what do you think is the obstacle?
I think just like everything, people don't like to change. So it's just like everybody wants to have sustainable world, but nobody wants to give up on their habits to fly or to own a car. people don't like to change, and it's very nice that municipalities around the world they say we want people to change, and we want people to cycle more, and we want people to walk more and use less the car. But then if you see how a lot of people in cities work, you see that it's also difficult for them to make a change. And by the way, also very difficult for me to make a change. Yeah? So if someone now will show up on my door from a municipality and tell me, from now on, you're not allowed to cycle anymore, although you love it and used to it, and from now on, you need to buy a car and pay every month money for the car and look for parking, I will be very angry. So I understand why it's so difficult for people to change, both citizens and decision makers.
And yeah, we have a long way, long
Yeah.
way, I guess.
But it's just important to remember that we try to create better cities. So there is no reason to stop, right?
No, true. One step at a time.
Mm.
And you talk also about making happy cities, or like making cities that make people smile, but
Yeah.
also you work in a very technical and data-driven way in some senses. And not saying that these two cannot be connected to each other, but I wanted to ask you, how's that process? How do you bring these two together and connect something that is completely emotional and like human psychology to data and numbers? And yeah,
I think that it's nice. It's a good question that I have actually while working. Like sometimes it's very easy to say, let's create great cities where people are centered, and then you end up the day realizing, oh my god, everything I did today was an Excel file. So wait, what does it have to do with great cities? But then it's really easy to it's really easy to just get sad about it, or get, lose the momentum, or just to think and reflect, hey, actually there is a direction where we are going. Easier said than done, but basically I think that to convince a city to make a change, or to convince residents for a change, you need to quote unquote attack them from different directions. So there are people that the human story really works for them, the emotions, like talking about their children going to school in a safe way. And there are people that the numbers, the statistics work very well for them. So showing statistics about safety and accidents around schools. And I think that the great power of combining those stories with data and emotions with numbers is that you have much more appealing story, or much more appealing case. It's very easy to be dismissed if you just come with a story, because there is always an engineer out there with better numbers than you, and better models. And there are and it's also, if you just come with numbers, people might tell you, okay, but what does it mean to people's life? How do you actually change people's life with those plans? And of course, we're always dealing with the environment of humans, so we need also to think in their stories. So it's this strange process in which we go between statistics and data to stories to experiences back to data. And for me personally, it works very natural, because I am an analytical person, but I also just love cities for being great places where people meet. I don't know if it's so intuitive for others as it is to me. Specifically, it works for me. And I have colleagues that love it as well. So I think that for some people it just makes sense, and some people just think it's way too much time spent on data, or way too much time spent on emotions. But I think that's the best balance.
No, that's true. And I think like in the past couple of decades we've been used to like collecting a lot of data but not actually using it. I've been doing street work in Milan, like for homelessness, and Milan has been collecting data about the gender, the age, every information of homeless people for the past, 15 years. And they've been continuously saying that the situation of, let's say, dormitories in the city is the reason that they're not going to those emergency houses. But still, after 15 years, the same person is still living in the street and the data is not being used, but the data is being collected still twice a week.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really, I think, have to build this capacity of using data to improve our situation, not only collecting them and putting them in Excel files.
Yeah, and also to turn the data into actionable idea or actionable step, because otherwise it's just presenting the data is very nice, but you actually need to turn it into either intervention or a policy or budgeting a decision.
Yeah, exactly. And looking at it like that is just overwhelming and makes you more hopeless than you were.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really important
especially when it comes to things like homelessness. I mean, this is horrible. People with no place to sleep, and you know that there is already enough information to make the right decisions, but it's very very difficult to convince people to make decisions and change the way we do things. So yeah.
Yeah, a very big transitional moment, I think, we're living in. But
well, soon the AI will tell us which decisions to make, right? So we better do it before the computer tells us.
I know. Oh, even okay. This I think relates also to AI, so maybe this is a good time to ask this question. So you're developing a new workshop. I don't know if you've already did it or you're still developing it. The one that talks about beyond flying cars.
Yeah.
And the way that you describe it is that for many people, mobility futures are still about flying cars, an idea that has been around for hundreds of years, and it's time to move beyond those old-fashioned tech-driven imaginaries. I love this sentence. It's amazing. But yeah, it would be great if you could a little bit expand on that, because I think, I also agree with that. And I feel that for years, we've seen modern or developed as equal to technological. And I think that is a little bit changing now. Like, development doesn't necessarily has to be this crazy tech-driven things. But yeah, can you a little bit tell us what is the modern way of looking at mobility and what is this workshop all about?
Yeah, so I will start by saying that it is it's a masterclass. We have a few-day workshop basically that we just had our first. Yeah, the first masterclass was given a couple of weeks ago here in Rotterdam. It was very successful with people from all around. Actually, I would say the world, but mostly Europe, of course, because it's difficult to come to Rotterdam only for 3 days. And it is part of our collaboration with EAT Urban Mobility. So this is a collaboration where we are developing masterclasses and online courses. The online courses are free on Urban Mobility Courses .eu or .com. You need to check both. But this masterclass is a work of actually mostly colleagues and partners here at Humankind. So I was not very much involved, although I was following it and also actually loved the idea behind first of all, the title, which I found just super cool idea. Yeah, it's really and also the content. But basically, our message in this workshop and this masterclass is that we creating imaginations about the future, and then we are wasting all our skills, power, and money to reach those imaginations. So in order to improve our future, we need to first create better vision. And maybe flying cars is just not the future. Maybe it's something else. It might be that the future is cycling. It might be that the future is walking. It might be that flying car is the future, but only for specific needs. And then we want to practice the skills to get to those new visions, to spread those new visions, but also to get there. And of course, it is very difficult if you are doing it, swimming against the stream, right? If Hollywood is keep showing flying cars as the future, they just have much bigger reach than a few urbanists in Rotterdam. But on the other end, we feel, and we saw also in the masterclass, so many great creative people from not only traffic engineers and mobility people, but also marketeers, and I mean a great group of participants, mostly women, which of course shows that women are so much more long-term thinkers than men in some way. Not surprising. And I think that you see that a lot of people sitting in different organizations, governmental and private, and they feel something with the future we are working on doesn't make sense, and we want to develop tools to get to a different future. So we already had a workshop, the masterclass, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, but we will have another one this year, I think around September. So if you still hear this listen to the podcast in April when we record it, then you still have time. And we will have it every year now for 1 or 2 times. This is just one of the master classes we are giving. So yeah.
That's great. What other things do you have? Like, what are other classes?
Yeah. So now in the agenda or in the schedule there are 2 master classes about cycling. So the designing the cycling city that we will have it. Last year it was sold out, so we created this year 2. We will have 2 times. It will be end of August and beginning of September. We will have 2 rounds. And that's where we just experience the Netherlands on the bike, and we learn about the history of the Netherlands and how to design cycling cities.
That's fun.
Combination of, yeah, that's actually my dream. I wish to do it every week, just to go around with a bicycle. That's a perfect job, to be honest. We have a a summer school together with the Technical University of Munich. So that's where we are going to be 1 week in Munich. That's the end of July, the last week of July, and the first week of August we will be 1 week in Rotterdam, and we are doing summer school about street experiments there. So it's all about urban accessibility, urban street life, and the usage of street experiments to promote better urban life. So that's also open for registration, also for students and non-students. We always like to, for all our workshops and classes, we have a mix between young enthusiastic students and professionals from all ages that just want to learn and collaborate with others. So that's always fun, actually.
That's great. Okay, perfect. Later, I'm gonna ask you for the links, so I will add it to the podcast.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks a lot.
And yeah, you also wrote a children book. You've done all the different mediums that you could contribute to.
Podcast is still quite new, right? Like it's all. I haven't been to so many podcasts, so I still need to do more.
Okay, that's
so you are helping me on that one. Yeah.
Okay, great. And yeah, I remember when you published the post about the children book, I was like, oh my gosh, that's super cool, and I would wish to illustrate that one. And I remember that you wrote that you were saying thanks to the illustrator, and it was really interesting. Yeah. So yeah, the book is called "The Car That Wanted to Be a Bike," and yeah, I wanted to little bit ask you about that, and why do you think like educating children about such issues are important, and why do you think like kind of exposing the mind of children to alternative ways of transportation can be good, and how can this actually affect the future generation to kind of become the promoter of like maybe alternative ways of thinking and alternative ways of seeing mobility?
Yeah, so first, I think that your question already kind of answers, right? Like, I mean, we need to show children different futures, different alternatives, just to open up their mind that the world is not, there is no one single story. And of course, if you go now to a bookshop, a children's bookshop, and you look for books that have to do that deal with cities or with mobility, you just see cars everywhere. If you look at children playing, they always play with cars, especially boys. They always get cars. They are being shown that cars are great uh, mobility options. The cars need to be fast and cool and new, and of course, it's also a very masculine way to move around the city. And in many of the stories, the coolest boy in class has the best car, and the richest people have great cars. So yeah, that's always the stories we hear, and of course, the story at least that I heard as a child, and the books that I read, right, and the games that I played. And I think it's ridiculous because I mean, bicycle is by far more fun than a car. Uh, it is true that you're sitting now in Italy, that if you get a car in a mountain in Italy and you drive on a beautiful mountain, it is also absolutely fun to drive a car. For many people, including myself, I find it very, very fun experience to go fast with beautiful views. But that's not the reality of driving a car on daily basis. The reality of driving a car is that it is just terrible. You sit in traffic, you look for parking, and you suffer. And that's just the reality of most car drivers around the world. And unlike that, cycling is much more fun, especially in places where cycling infrastructure is decent. So cycling in the Netherlands is so much more fun than driving a car. And what I wanted to show in this book is that there are people who chose to cycle because it's more fun, and that even the car could be jealous of the bicycle. So it's just a book. It's a small, fun book about a car that that starts to be a little bit jealous of some other bikes. And yeah, it is. I was surprised by the amount of people who actually bought it, and the pictures I'm getting from all around the world of children reading it. It makes me really happy. And I'm also working on translating it, of course, to different languages, because English it's not the main language of most of the people in the world, and it would be nice to have more people reading it. The problem is that publishing books is not it doesn't make you close to rich. It hardly covers the hours you spend on it, so it takes me some time. I'm just doing it slowly, but the nice thing is that this kind of stories are timeless. So it might take me another year or so to release different versions, but I still unfortunately know that most of the books out there will be about the cars, and this book is a great alternative for parents who want to show their children something else.
That's so cool. And have you been like in connection with someone who have read it? Like, have you seen anyone that has read it, or did you
So
talk to them?
I was doing some readings
Oh,
myself
that's cool.
to kids in schools, in some schools, in a bicycle festival here in Rotterdam. I get pictures from parents. I mean, people I don't personally know, but send me and tell me the reaction of their child. It makes me so happy. So if you have read this book with your children and you didn't send me yet a story about it, please do. It will make me very delighted, and it is it's really so amazing how you can reach so many people with just actually quite a simple medium. It's just a small book, right? But it works. So it's also one of those projects that when you decide to do, I mean, at least myself, I decide to do so many projects every every week, and 99% of those projects fail very, very quickly. So it's one of those projects that you decide to do and you don't know if they will actually happen, but this one actually succeeded.
That's cool. Okay, I'm gonna ask you also for the link of that. We can
Yeah,
also put
cool.
it in the
Thanks.
description. And yeah, I think I'm gonna go to my last question.
All
And
right.
yeah, we were fast. We were pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about the role that our listeners can maybe play, and if someone is listening and thinking, "Oh, that's really cool. I want to be a part of this movement." I'm not a designer, not an architect, not an urban planner, but how can I kind of advocate for better types of mobility or more sustainable types of mobility in my city? If you know any initiative they can join, any way that they can advocate in general.
Wow, because I'm not so I don't know about all initiatives around the world, but one thing I know for sure is that every city I've been to, and I've been traveling around quite a lot, there is no perfect city out there. And even when it comes to mobility, even the Netherlands, which considered very good, has still a lot of things to achieve. And what you see in many of those countries is that you have uh, grassroots organizations and NGOs um, that try to make a change. And I think that being part of those initiatives is probably the best way you could make a change, because what happens in most projects is that the people that are against better sustainable transportation, about making cities green, they are very loud. They are always out there. They don't want any change. They want to keep the city the way it is. They want to keep the parking space that they have. They want to keep going to work with car. And I understand them. They're afraid, or they have a different maybe way of looking at cities than I do. But those are always the loudest people. And politicians, they cannot take always on popular decisions, although they are the good decisions. So what you see is that politicians keep just failing. They keep listening to the loud, in most cases, minority. And being a supporter of change is also very important. So if you're not a professional urbanist and you just want to advocate for that, that's already a great start. The second thing is to start going to participation meetings. Same thing. I mean, you have those meetings about the future of the park or the future of the street. And I'm telling you, because I've been to many of those participation as professional, but also as a citizen, most of the people going to those meetings are angry citizens, because they really care, and anger can really move people. The people who are against plans, for instance, to introduce a bike lane and remove some parking spaces, they will be there in the meeting, and nobody is going to defend your ambitions to be a cyclist. Nobody is going to be there if you're not going to go to those meetings. So help support the cause by actually going to those meetings. Raising your voice, because the people that are against the great plans, they are always out there. The people that are in favor are just sitting at home complaining on Twitter, just like me. So it's always good to go to this meeting. And lastly, if you actually want to become a professional urbanist or start working in this profession, I learned that there are so many ways to learn it for free online. There are so many communities. There are so many courses. I mean, if you just want to learn how to use design tools to redesign streets, there are a lot of tutorials out there online, right? On YouTube, but also other platforms, including the one I mentioned before, the urban mobility courses. This is just one example for just mobility courses for professionals and for enthusiasts that they can go to EU funded platform. But there are so many nice tutorials on YouTube that show you how to design, how to advocate. It really depends what you find attractive in urbanism, but you can learn quite a lot and meet like-minded people if you start doing it in your own city. So I got to know a lot of nice people just by going to participation meetings and meeting people that want also to just create nicer streets. And I also, by the way, learned a lot from the people who are against proposals that I support, because I really learned why they are against. And many times they have very valid points that, one, either I never thought about, or two, I thought about, but I didn't explain well how the plan will affect those people. So I think just participating in those meetings is a great way to be involved.
That's true. Very true. And makes us a little bit less polarized.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's also very easy to get more polarized and just have a fight, but that's depends on your temper and how much you want to get involved.
That's true. Thank you so much, Lior, for being here. You can check Lior's LinkedIn page, check his book, his TED Talk. It's very interesting. Also,
Thank
the
you.
workshops that they're doing, the masterclasses in their website. I don't know, Lior, if you want to say, if there's anything that I didn't mention and you want to share, please.
No, well, I think you said everything. If someone is indeed interested in one of those workshops, it's always great to see people in Rotterdam. And I also go around quite a lot giving talks. So if someone is in the crowd in one of those talks and he listens also to this podcast, come after the talk and say hi, because I'm always happy to speak with people. It's always nice. So
That's
happy
great.
always to have a discussion with someone. It's always nice.
That's great. Do you come to Milan anytime soon? Might you?
Well, I think it might be there is not planned before the summer, but I've been there last year, so probably will.
Okay.
And it's reachable by a train, right? Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think so. I thought you were gonna say reachable by bike. I was like, I'm not sure.
Well, probably as well, but I think I will stick to the train in that one.
Yeah, no, good. Thank you again, Lior. If and thanks to our listeners. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, follow on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and all those different channels. Thanks again, Lior. It was great talking.
Thank you.
Thank you.